Now, I'm not too sure if you've been hearing about this. It's only been going on for the past couple days, maybe the past day or two even, and it's the situation in Kazakhstan. Now, the situation seems to be developing quite quickly, but here's what we have so far. A government-induced price hike in fuel, liquefied fuel specifically, which Kazakhstan relies heavily on. In response to this price hike, the Kazakh people have decided enough is enough and started protesting. Now, these protests rapidly turned into arson, vandalism, and civil unrest, and now, just a day after it was first reported on RT, so take this as you will, but the protesters, if they can still be called that, have now taken over the main airport, have burnt down the presidential palace, and are now staging one of the largest protests currently going on. Now, the only thing I can compare this to is the Revolution of Dignity, which took place in Ukraine in 2014, where the Ukrainian people started protesting, then they started rioting, and then they eventually overthrew the government, with the president then escaping over to neighbouring Russia. Obviously, I'm no expert, and the news with this is going to continue developing. This is only the second day of it going on, but from what I've seen so far, this definitely looks like the straw that broke the camel's back, so to say. It's all of this, I don't think personally, is just a result of the government hiking the price in liquid fuel. I think this is much more in depth. I think this is much more complicated, and I think the Kazakh people have had enough of government overreach and are finally taking up arms against their government, who have become tyrannical and have overextended themselves in terms of their governmental power. Now, as just an example to show you by how overreaching the Kazakh government, the Kazakhstani government, I'm not too sure. Now, I think one of the more easy to understand and rudimentary ways of understanding how government overreach has really reached a turning point in Kazakhstan, we can take a look at the Freedom House Freedom in the World Index of Kazakhstan. Now, overall, they've been rated a 23 out of 100, where 100 would represent a full liberal democracy, by the people, for the people, that whole mishmash, and 0 out of 100 representing a completely authoritarian regime with no civil liberties, political rights, or internet freedom for the populace of that country. Now, I don't believe any country on planet Earth reaches 100 out of 100, but, that's to be expected, and the methodology of this rating system is assuming that a liberal democracy, a full liberal democracy, would rank 100 out of 100, so take it as you will. But I think this is just a pretty good gauge of the overall freedom people living in Kazakhstan have. So we can see here political rights are a 5 out of 40, because the elections in Kazakhstan have always been, let's just call it, dodgy, and the civil liberties are a bit better in terms of ratios, but still 18 out of 60, so less than a third. Definitely not too good, with the internet freedom score scoring a full third. So that is the highest ratio of these items listed on this webpage in terms of freedom in Kazakhstan. But something interesting about the internet freedom of Kazakhstan, it may be rated the highest in terms of the amount of freedom you have within the country, but if we just have a look up here and have a look here, we can see that today the internet was actually switched off in Kazakhstan amid the unrest, so it is now it's now very difficult to access the internet within Kazakhstan it's been shut down by the government. As you can see here, NetBlocks, a British organisation that monitors internet freedom, has described the situation in the country as a nation-scale internet blackout. Now, we've seen something similar to this happening in the People's Republic of Myanmar, where they had a democratic election, the opposition party won, and in response to that, the army rolled in and took control of the government, called it a democratic win for themselves, and then subsequently cut the internet out and started purging all opposition. I think this is something similar we're seeing in Kazakhstan. Again, it's very early on and it's only been going on for a day or two, but the conclusion is that the spike in fuel prices, I think, was the the spark that's going to ignite this. I think this is definitely going to turn into some sort of revolution, if it hasn't already turned into one. Kazakh president asks Russia-led bloc for military help. So I'm only assuming this is against the so-called rioters, protesters, revolutionaries, whatever you want to call them. Now we can see down here the president is actually referring to the people protesting as terrorist gangs. So it's definitely not trying to de-escalate the situation by any means, and he's calling this a terrorist threat against the country. So this definitely depends on your point of view of this whole situation, but I think from the wording he's using, he's definitely not legitimizing the reasons for these people protesting, and he's definitely taking the offensive route. He's definitely trying to target these people and call them out for what he thinks they are. So, of course, it's all up to you on who you think is in the right here. Again, this is all from RT, so take it as you will. But yeah, definitely interesting developments going on. I'm definitely not looking forward to the outcome, but definitely intrigued as to what will result from this. Again, another news article by MSN News, take it as you will. The protests that started this whole thing as a result of the fuel price hike very, very rapidly turned into unrest, looting and arson. It's definitely moving very, very quickly, and the situation is definitely evolving into something much bigger than just a simple protest as fuel prices. They're definitely pulling a France and Ukraine move here, I think it's safe to say anyway. Then there are reports that as the protesters started to commit arson, they actually raided a firearms store in the old capital, I believe, and raided the warehouse of firearms and took up arms against the police, who then returned fire. The internet has been cut off, so getting more footage after all these events there's going to be a lot less of it than usual. Just wanted to cover this today. It seemed pretty interesting. I haven't seen something like this since Myanmar and Ukraine, so I'm definitely intrigued about what's going to happen next and how the government is going to respond to this in the long term. Maybe even see how other countries are going to respond to this, see if Russia's going to respond to the situation, if they're going to take advantage of this, if the United States is going to take advantage of this some way or another. So yeah, the government in Kazakhstan have actually resigned, and the president accepted their resignation earlier today. So it's definitely kicking up to be something of an interesting time. So these are interesting times we're living in, and I think this just goes to exacerbate that. So yeah, I definitely recommend you to go check out the links. I'll put them in the description in case you want to read more. This is a very quickly developing news story, so definitely recommend you keep up with it if you're interested in these sorts of things anyway. So yeah, well, thank you very much for watching. I hope this resolves itself quickly, but it's not looking too good. So thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.